This is Daniel, and I'm going electric for the average person, driving on autopilot through northern Mississippi, and I have discovered the secret to unlimited range, endless efficiency in your battery, and being able to go as far as you can dream. Stay tuned and find out how. Welcome back, coming to you from mile 9,228 from my amazing trip around the United States. Today's journey is taking me up the Natchez Trace Trail Parkway, which is this amazing little road that goes from southwestern Mississippi at the town of Natchez along the Mississippi River, up through Jackson and into northeastern Mississippi to the town of Tupelo. I think that's how it's pronounced. I think the whole route is from Jackson to Tupelo is something like 180 miles. And I went to Vicksburg through the river area and didn't do the little stretch between Natchez and Jackson, but I think that's like another 60 miles. In any case, this roadway is just you and one lane each direction, and it has given me the opportunity to do a little testing in this car in the way that I can't do on the interstates without being run down by semi-trucks and run over by giant pickup trucks. And I have discovered something in this afternoon's test. And why did I do this test? Because there were a couple times on my trip over the past several weeks, especially when I was in Texas, I think there's some energy vortex in Texas which prevents you from getting good mileage. There was a trip that my dad and I took, I made an episode about it, but didn't talk about the mileage, where we went all the way down to Boca Chica to SpaceX and check out the rockets and the launch facility there. It was super awesome, check it out. But I went from South Padre Island to Boca Chica, which I think was like, I don't know, 40 miles, and then was supposed to go from Boca Chica up to Kingsville to Supercharge, which was like 120 miles, total 160 miles. When I got in the car, and I charged the car up to 99%, when I got in that car, the estimations for range had me arriving at 10% maybe, and then when I got on the road, and I was only doing the speed limit the whole time, suddenly the estimations were bringing me down to 5%, and it wasn't clear that I would make it up to Kingsville, so I had to backtrack all the way to South Padre Island and recharge just to guarantee I'd have enough juice to make it up to Kingsville, which was shocking, because when I ran the numbers, that would mean that my battery, just at highway speeds, would only get me about 170 miles, significantly less than that 326 mile EPA number, which we all know is sheer fantasy. But I mean, somewhere around 240 or 260 would be, I think, reasonable. So I did report a little ticket to Tesla and wanted them to check it out, but I'm on the road, so it's hard for them to provide me mobile service, and where do I even get it fixed? So I'll deal with that a little bit later. But I just thought, well, I'm on this little road, why don't I do two tests and see what kind of efficiency I can get at lower speeds? Now, I know basic physics, like it takes energy to move mass through the universe, and the faster you get to the speed of light, the more energy it takes, to the point that you have to take all the mass in the universe or energy in the universe to move something at speed of light. We're not near the speed of light. However, I do understand that the faster I drive, the more energy it's going to take. Presumably, conversely, or inversely, the lower I drive, or the slower I drive, the less energy it will take. So I did two tests today, and I'm going to give you the results. These tests will actually be helpful to you if you're trying to hypermile or you need to hypermile. Now, when I was calculating the numbers for this trip, based on my own personal experience driving this car at highway speeds between 70 and 90 miles an hour, which I hate to say, or I love to say, is the speed around Texas in the South. Like, you just can't drive 35 or 40 miles an hour on an interstate here. You'll be destroyed. But I have this opportunity, so I'm going to run you through the numbers. And because I wasn't totally sure that this Tesla would be able to get me from Jackson up to Tupelo without running out of electrons in the middle of a forest, I am happy to report to you that I have seen phenomenal mileage out of this car. Now, let me give you the two scenarios. One, the speed limit on this road is 50 miles an hour, but I've decided to do a test at 40 miles per hour and then a test at 35 miles an hour. The conditions are I'm driving at about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and for the most part, this road is relatively flat. Now, There are, I think locals would say this area is totally hilly, but growing up in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California, and then all around the rest of California, I would say there are no mountains in sight and virtually no hills. Although if you look at the mileage, you'll see in the car in the energy reading, you can actually see the hills as you drive over them. So let's jump into it, because if you ever need to hypermile because you're about to run out of juice, this is what you're going to do, and it's going to save the day. Now, I wrote a couple numbers down here. I'm on autopilot. I think there's a car coming up behind me. Hopefully they'll pass. So let's get into it. Scenario number 1, driving at 40 miles per hour on relative flat land. You'll notice it's getting a little dark in here, so I'm going to take off my sunglasses, toss them to the side. At 40 miles per hour, I was getting 191 watt hours per mile. Now, I will tell you, typically driving this car at highway speeds between 70 and 85, 90 miles an hour, you're going to be in the 330 to 370, 390 or more watt hours per mile. When I got below 300, that gets my juice pumping. And then when I got near 200, I couldn't believe it. And then when it went under 200, if I were the sort of person who would drink and drive, and I'm not, I would have just popped open a bottle of champagne and gone wild, because I have never seen numbers so low in this car. I even find, like, when I'm stopping and going in city traffic or towns, my watt hour per mile is like in the 500s or something. Like, clearly starting and stopping a car takes a lot of energy, but not when you're cruising along at 40 miles per hour. At that rate, if you divide 191 into 1,000, which is 1,000 watt hours or 1 kilowatt, you're going to get a mileage of 5.26 miles per kilowatt. Like, mind blown. A lot of my trip, I'm getting like 2.9. If I'm lucky, I'm in the 3.1 or 3.3 range, which makes me super happy. And that's kind of, I calculate at 3 miles per kilowatt hour when I'm planning my trips and where I need to supercharge or slow charge or whatever. 5.26 blows my mind. If you take 5.26 and then you multiply that by 33.41, which is the amount of kilowatt hours of energy and a gallon equivalent of gasoline, that would get me an MPGe rating of 175. That's my little note paper here. Insane. Like, the car's rated for what, 126? I have never seen that number. I think the highest I ever got was like 103 on the highway, and I think I was doing like 65 miles per hour. 175 is insane. Now, I'm assuming my battery has 72 kilowatt hours of capacity. Tesla doesn't tell us what we've got. I ran some numbers the other night when I was going through all my charging data and my spreadsheet and all the rest of it. My numbers show me I have 78 kilowatt hours in this battery, which I thought was crazy. I haven't seen anything online about that, but hey, that's what my numbers tell me. And I'm not a mathematician, so don't trust me. But I'm just going to use 72 as a standard. Seems like kind of common enough from what I read online. At 72 kilowatt hours capacity for the battery, my total range at these numbers is 378 miles. Like, that's pretty damn good. So that's scenario number 1. Now, I was driving nice and slow. On occasion, I had to roll down my window and tell people to drive around me. It seems like people in Mississippi don't pass easily. In other states, even if you're doing 80 and they want to clock in at 100, they'll come right around you and go. Not Mississippi, I gotta say. They're a little slower around here. They drive pretty fast on the highway, but on these back roads, they just don't pass. I don't know if they're afraid of running into raccoons or wild animals or bears. I don't know. Scenario number 2, and it's definitely getting darker in here. 35 miles per hour for 5 miles. I swear, when I was doing this test, I could have fallen asleep and it wouldn't have mattered because the car's on autopilot, and even if it disengaged and I ran into something, it wouldn't hurt me anyways. I'm joking. So let's take these numbers quick before it gets too dark. You can kind of see the sunset behind me and the glass roof. At 35 miles an hour and driving over pretty much flat land with the occasional tiny little hill in the way, I was getting numbers as low as 179 watt hours per mile. Like, insane. Dividing that number into 1,000 watt hours or 1 kilowatt hour returned a number of 5.59 miles per kilowatt hour. Like, it just doesn't get any better. Or does it? I didn't go below 35 because I do need to get to my destination at some point tonight. Taking that number and multiplying it by 33.41, which is the equivalent kilowatt hours of energy to be found in a gallon of gasoline, you get an MPGe rating of 186. And then, if you take the efficiency numbers that I gave just before and multiply that by 72 kilowatt hours, which again is what I assume the capacity of the battery to be, that gives me a total range at 35 miles an hour, 50 degrees Fahrenheit on flat land in northern Mississippi of 402 miles out of my tank. I mean, so what's the takeaway? The takeaway is that Mississippi is the best place in America to drive an electric car, although there are almost no chargers anywhere. Takeaway number 2, if you are desperate for miles, if you are convinced that you are not going to get where you need to go, and there are no level 2 chargers around, and there are no superchargers anywhere, and if you can handle it on the highway, say you're there, you're on some back road, ideally you're avoiding mountain passes that'll gobble up your range like nobody's business, drop the car down to 40 miles an hour, drop it down to 35 miles an hour, and you will be able to squeeze out insane mileage. I don't know. Do I think my battery is defective anymore after this test? Kinda. I mean, I thought that I should be able to get more than 170 or 190 miles out of a charge, which is what I need because I'm on the road. I'm not one of these guys who's charging at home yet. I have to wait until I get back to San Francisco before I can live that lifestyle. So I don't know. I would love to hear from you all if your highway driving is giving you numbers similar to what I mentioned before, or if you're getting better range on the highway than I'm getting, or if mostly your life is kind of driving around at 35, 40, 45, 50 miles an hour, and you're up in this 240 to 260 plus range on the battery. Let me know. Bright lights. Let me know, because I'm trying to figure out what to do about my battery. What I have discovered today, at least, in Mississippi, in this beautiful forest, on this historic road, is that if I just drive 35 miles for the rest of my life, I will never have to recharge again.